Mark Tremonti here at the PRS factory, and I'm very excited to show you my new amplifier, the MT100. I'm an amp fanatic. Amps are my thing above, even more than guitars sometimes. I love guitars, but amps are really my addiction. You know, a lot of amps that I have at home capture one thing very well, and when I'm on tour, I miss certain things about certain amps that I don't bring out with me, so I wanted to have one amp that did it all. You know, certain amps are great at the clean thing, certain amps are great at the high gain thing, but there's not a lot of amps that I feel do everything. So I wanted to create an amp that covered everything from A to Z. So many years back, me and my friends here at PRS Guitars talked about amplifiers and maybe doing a signature amplifier once they had launched their amplifier branch of PRS. Once I saw that all these lunchbox amps were the top selling amps in the world at the time, I said, you know, why not jump into that market first and see what happens? So we developed the MT15. It took many years to do it, but I think we came up with something that we were all very proud of. And I was nervous to release it because I'm an amp fanatic and I didn't want to hear any criticisms about the amp that we believed in so much. And when it came out, it got best in show at the NAMM convention, and it, you know, it got everybody who bought it loved it. So I was very happy with it. And from those days, we decided, you know, why don't we do a 100-watt version of that amp, and that's why we're here today to talk about the MT100. So developing the MT100 was a long process. We took about 5 years to do it, and we didn't compromise on anything. You know, we went back and forth. I must have 4 or 5 prototypes at my house from different iterations of the amp. We had a 2-channel version initially. You know, I wanted to have a 3-channel amplifier, something that goes from crystal clean to as driven as you'd ever want it. I wanted to have it to be 6L6 driven. We went through many different transformers until we found the right ones. I wanted a big, heavy, awesome, great sounding transformers, and we got that. Each one of these channels are completely separate. The only thing that these channels share are the 2 12 AX7s that are in the effects loop. Everything else is completely isolated. So you really have 3 amps in one. There's nothing shared in here. They're all very unique to themselves. And working with you know, Rich Hannon here at PRS, we would go back and forth every day talking about this amplifier year after year until getting it done. Doug Sewell and his team being patient with me, and sometimes being picky helps in the long run because it's not, you know, we didn't let anything slide. This thing is exactly the way we wanted it to be, and I'm glad we stuck it out because it's the one amp that does it all for me, and I'm sure everybody else a lot of other people will feel the same way. So the amp that I was looking to create covered what I had at home in my studio. I wanted everything from a very chimey, clean tone. That was a combination of kind of a Fender Twin marrying a Bruno Underground 30, you know, a big headroom, but also chimey and very clean. I use a lot of fingers when I use my clean, so I wanted it to be very chimey and present, but also warm and rich at the same time. A lot of people will see this amp and just consider it a high-gain amplifier, but many high-gain amplifiers out there I don't think pay as much attention as they sometimes should to get the clean channel where it needs to be, because it's, to me, just as important as the other channels. So that was the clean channel. Then on the Overdrive channel, when I'm at home, I like to plug into overdriven amps like a Dumble. I've got, you know, I absolutely love my Dumble at home, and I brought it to the factory here and showed it to the guys, and me, Doug, Paul, and Rich jumped in there, and Paul got in there and started messing, tinkering around with that channel until we got it right, and Doug knocked it out of the park. And that Overdrive is probably the most versatile channel on the amplifier. It goes from a very clean, slight broken up signal that you can almost strum through chords on to a straight up rock and roll sound that you'd hear on like an AC/DC record. There's just enough gain where you can dime this gain control, stand in front of the amp, and it won't feed back on you. But if you hold a note, it's gonna bloom. And I've always looked for that on an Overdrive amp, for an amp that will bloom at a lower volume with even when you turn the gain down to, you know, noon, it will still bloom on you. That's got the most mojo on this amp, I think, is that Overdrive channel. And when I'm at home, I probably spend the most time on that channel. The channel that pretty much most of the people will come for is the high gain channel. It's aggressive and brutal as you'd want a high gain amp to be, and percussive, but it's also focused. It's very articulate. It's like a mastered version of some of the high gain amplifiers that I grew up listening to. It's got more gain than you'd ever need, so I usually keep the gain right around noon. It's exactly what I look for in a high gain channel. Other than that, once we got it all dialed in, we talked about the aesthetic of the amp. I wanted it to be kind of timeless and industrial looking, so I just said, let's make it as black as we can get it. So to me, it's the best sounding, best looking, perfect amp for what I do. So the way I laid this amp out, it was very simple, very straightforward. I'm always thinking in a live sense. I want to be able to look back at the amp and know exactly what's going on at all times. I don't want to be confused by too many operations on the amp. So each channel is very straightforward with your EQ controls, your volume, and your presence control. The buttons on top are just what changes the channels if you're going to do them with your hand. And you also have the foot switch, the 3-channel foot switch, that the LEDs correspond with the channels you select. So when you're on a clean channel, of course, you're blue. So if you're playing live, you're not looking backwards. You know which channel you're on. Overdrive, you're orange. Lead, you're red. So like I said, if you're 30 feet away from your amplifier, you're going to know exactly that you're going to know you pressed the right button. Because we all know when you're playing live, you hit the wrong button sometimes and don't realize it till it's too late. On the back, you have an effects loop, which I can't live without. And then you have access to your tubes to bias your tubes right out of the back. So it's very streamlined, very straightforward, and everything you would need and nothing you don't need. I've been using this amp live now for gosh, about a year and a half, but it's been on a few records now. I think it's been on 3 or 4 records. So live, I use all 3 channels through pretty much every show I play. You know, they all serve their purpose. So on the clean channel, my preferred setting is having this volume, which kind of acts as a gain control on the clean channel at noon. So it kind of very full, clean tone, but you can also, you know, I would take my volume master and turn it way down. You can dime this gain and get a little at the edge of breakup, you know, so that's kind of the, you know, when I say this amp goes from A to Z, that's kind of the entry into the overdrive. Get it to break up. So it's just at that edge of breakup that I love, but like I said, for the most part, I'm going to keep it around noon. So the Overdrive channel is the most versatile channel on the amplifier. So if we start down with the gain, you know, down at about 8 o'clock here, it kind of picks up where the clean channel left off. And I'll just kind of play the same chords I was playing before. Then you turn it up to about noon, a little more bitey. And then if you crank it all the way up, dime it, you can stand in front of this amplifier and it won't feed back on you, but it's got just enough gain. If you hold a note, it will eventually bloom on you, which that's kind of something that I was really looking forward to in this amp, is to finding that, you know, that bloomy kind of sound. So. The third channel is the lead channel. To me, it's one of the most important channels. It's probably the channel that's going to bring most people to this amplifier. More gain than you could ever need, I think. It's got, right now I've got it dialed back to about 9 o'clock, and it's got plenty for that nice percussive rhythm, you know, if you're doing some palm muted stuff. You know, to me, it's a combination of all the amps I grew up playing. It's the Mesa Boogie rectifier, it's the Bogner Ubershaw, it's all these amps that I loved kind of rolled into one. You know, I liked a little bit of each of those amplifiers. They all did great things, and this is kind of the baby that they all had, and you know, that came from many years of playing it and a lot of experimentation. So right now I've got the gain turned down, like I said, about 9 o'clock. That was the amp kind of at about 9 o'clock, but typically where I use it is right at about noon. You know, this is where I'll play with it live, and this is how it sounds. So like I said, that's to me the sound I go for when it comes to that aggressive rock thing. You know, when I designed this amp, I wanted to make sure that if you had everything set at noon, it was going to sound great. So typically, if you want to start out getting your own tones, dial everything to noon and go from there and find your own unique sound. But you know, just like an album, when you work on something for so long and you look forward to seeing people's reaction to it. And this amp, I think people are they're gonna love it. I know I love it. I'm really excited to see when people get it in their hands. I want to see all the videos on YouTube of people playing it. It's something that I'm very proud of. It brings the best out in me. I wanted to see it bring the best out in other people. It's our best foot forward. It's the best we could do in 5 years of developing this amplifier.